but I knew there were coyotes there. And so we just kept throwing sound at them. And then eventually we called in a quadruple.
Wow.
So that was wild. And they ended up coming into the biggest brawl coyote fight that I have. But throughout that night though, we called in several to prey in distress. They came into just solo vocals. They came into pup in distress, and then they came into coyote fights.
So you're basically just trying to figure out what's going to push their buttons that night.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome to episode 11 of the Huntxp podcast. We're glad that you've joined us for this. Jonny and I are experiencing a little bit of a low. Packers lost tonight.
Oh,
So we're kind of sad as we're recording this. And we got a Packer fan on the pod tonight. And it's Cody Kraut, who's coming back already to talk about a little predator hunting. So we're going to walk through predator hunting, what that's like to hunt coyotes specifically. He's probably going to talk about a bobcat that he just shot and how that ties into deer hunting, how you do that. You might be an experienced predator hunter. Welcome. You might have never done that before, or you just are kind of getting a beat on it, the predator's connection with a deer herd in your location and want to kind of do your bit to clean them up. You're in the right place. We're going to walk through kind of from a beginner's perspective, how to get into it, what mistakes to avoid, and what things to do. So that'll be a fun conversation. But Cody,
it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to doing a little bit of that this winter. I have not really done it much, so it'd be fun to jump into it. But Cody, also a Packer fan. We were texting earlier today, and he just sends us a picture of I'll put it on the pod, picture of the face palm in the deer stand. He's hunting, watching the Packers, and that was kind of the mutual feeling of the end of our season.
Dude, I was really hoping that we were going to be able to, the three of us, really celebrate a Packers victory on this pod.
Yes.
That would have really been special.
That would have. Oh, man. But we're also coming off a high because last week's episode was just incredible. And if somehow you missed us interviewing the legend Jonny Eberhardt, go back, listen to that. Particularly if you're a deer hunter, do that. It was awesome. Anything still is sticking with you, Jonny, from that interview?
Well, yeah. I mean, there was a lot. He talked about like the three things, to do for sure. And he talked about scent control. He talked about hunting out of a saddle. But one thing I really like that he said, and I like it so much because it actually was proven true in my own hunting experience this year, was do not overhunt.
Yeah.
And I really, it's so hard, like when you have time off to actually go and then to not go, like that's really hard. And the self-control to not go in and booger an area. Yeah, but I've been thinking about that a lot lately. And I'm thinking about how many times I've probably messed up a mature deer because I was in the area too often and not when conditions were right, or I was in there checking cameras too much or whatever I was doing. So,
yeah, many things are sticking with me, but one of the things that was sticking with me is his strategy in early October to do the sparring sequence by a cornfield. Did you catch that?
Yep.
I totally want to try that. I think that sounds so fun. If you actually were successful in drawing a mature buck out of a cornfield who's been highly pressured, man, that would be quite the experience.
And just the difference between sparring and rattling, how he kind of laid that out too, because I think most people, they see, or they want to do what they see on TV. They want to see the guy, you want to smash the antlers, make all this racket. And there's a time and a place for it. There's different regions for it, but talking about that nice little sparring sequence, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how often it's worked for him. You're like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just love generally because there's a lot of similarities to where he's hunting in Michigan primarily and where we spend most of our time. So that was just awesome because a lot of times you got to do some contextualization, talking to people in different contexts, but not much with that. There's a lot of similarities in the terrain and tactics. So that was great. Hey, it's time for a new segment, Johnny. I'm pumped for this. We'll see if it's a one-time deal or a future deal. But we're going to call it Crockett News. So I, pulled up Crockett. If you don't know who Crockett is the custom AI that we are developing as a community that acts as a hunting guide for you and a Ron Swanson quote machine as well. I don't know if you knew that, but we may or may not have programmed it to give you Ron Swanson quotes whenever possible from Parks and Rec. Yes, Parks and Rec. Anyways, so I just said, hey, let's ask Crockett what's in the hunting world news and see what's going on there and get our opinion about it. So I'm going to get your opinion about stuff, Johnny.
Yep.
Here we go. Let's ready.
Do it. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. The first one is Ohio poacher Christopher Alexander slapped with a $47,000 fine. $7,000. I don't know if this is the same one I saw that was like maybe record and then it was a poach. I don't know if this is the same one, but what do you think about that, man? 47 grand.
47 grand. I think if you're poaching bucks off private property I think I know some of the story. He poached it, but then he posted it. Like he put it on social media. If this is the same story I'm thinking of, and so I'm like, first of all, not that I condone this in any way, but you might have got away with it had you not posted it online. And again, I don't condone that, but like, man, don't be an idiot. But $40,000, you play dumb games, you win stupid prizes. We'll put it that way.
You heard it here first.
That's a really stupid prize.
That's a stupid prize.
No deer is worth $47,000 to me. Sorry.
I feel like these like big poaching stories sort of expose the ugly underbelly of how competitive shooting the biggest buck can get and how ugly it can get in someone's life. Like pretty ugly, man.
Very
50 grand essentially. And a lot of law breaking. So, well, there's that. And then in good news, I don't know if you saw this, but potential world record elk taken this year. Did you see that elk? I'll get a picture of it on the pod here as we're talking about it.
Yeah, it's absolutely freaky.
Yeah. It's like super thick, super dark all over. Just freakishly huge and symmetrical. Like, I don't think there's any craziness. It's just awesome.
Yeah. No, I did see pictures of it. It's pretty wild. So congrats to that guy.
Congrats to that guy.
Congrats,
whoever
man.
you are.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, it's beautiful elk.
Did you know that you can use AI to become a better hunter? Here's what you got to do. Our team at Huntxp has built a custom AI. We call it Crockett. And it is the combination of the power of AI and the collective wisdom of hunters for many years mashed up together and put right in your pocket, right in the field where you can level up your hunting game. You can ask it things like, what's the best broadhead setup for my situation? What's the best day to hunt this week? All sorts of questions. You can take pictures of the snake you almost stepped on in South Dakota and say, is this a rattlesnake? That's something that actually happened to us. It's super fun. Our community is having a great time building this. We'd love for you to join in at huntxp.com. Join us.
Dang.
Let's talk about predators.
Yeah, right.
Let's bring Cody on the pod. That was Crockett News. Thanks, Crockett. Thanks for keeping us informed on what's going on.
Crockett. Thanks.
Oh, I forgot. We got to do shout outs. We got to do shout outs. And I'm just so stoked, Johnny, because this was the week where our little Instagram community grew past the 100 mark. We went 0 to 100 in like 2 months. So I just want to rattle off some of our latest subscribers.
Yes.
And do some shout outs here. So shout out to Milhart64. Zach J. Schultz. Way to go, dude. Thanks for the follow. Vinny. Thank you, Vinny.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Vinny.
your follow.
Appreciate that, Vinny.
Mike ECO85 started to follow. Appreciate that, dude. Paul Church 80. I like it. Paul Church. Screaming Eagle 23. I like that. I don't know who you are, but I like that. TSMCC Cubanin. Thank you, dude. John Cooper 8831. Love it. He's got a picture of a sick buck. You should check that out. Yeah,
John Cooper.
Shot a really nice. John Cooper. Let's see here. Tony Teller. Shout out to you, man. B Moon 74 and Gun Daddy. No, Gun Dance.
I think he should change it
Gun
to
Daddy.
Gun Daddy. No, he should change it to Gun
He
Daddy.
should definitely change it to Gun Daddy. Gun Dan, you got a sick handle. Thank you. Yeah, it's actually Gunny Dan. So I totally slotted
Okay,
that.
so can we just, if you're okay with it, we need to let the audience know that you are dyslexic. This happens from time to time.
All the time. Good
Yeah.
thing you can't see what I'm trying to read because it's real bad. Gun Daddy. I mean, Gunny Dan. I mean,
Gun Daddy.
Gunny Dan dude.
Daddy
Gun
Gun.
dude.
Daddy Gun. Daddy Gun time. Pew, pew,
Daddy
pew.
Gun time.
Pew, pew, pew.
Shout out to you, dude.
Shout out to you, Gunny Dan.
Appreciate you guys. Look at all these follows. Kimball Murray, S. Brown 74, MJ Mansell.
We know him.
That would be Michael Mansell,
We know
our
him.
dude from a couple podcasts ago. And of course, we got a like from Cody Kraut, who is our guest tonight. So what do you think, Johnny?
Bring
Should
him
we bring him
on.
on the pod?
Yep.
Let's do it. Cody. What's up,
Whoa.
man?
Back by popular demand.
Yeah. Yes, the first
for sure.
two-timer. The first two-timer.
Yeah, that's quite the...
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
you are. It's good.
Love the gun in the background.
Well, Johnny just had the best background, and my wife wouldn't let me put any holes in the office wall, so I figured the gun was the best thing that I could do to
I've
keep
switched
her happy.
positions, but I'll give you just a little. Like, there's the bear. There's a
There's
the bear.
couple
Oh, my
other
goodness.
whitetails.
Dude, Cody, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are you? You okay?
I'm doing okay. Doing okay. Sad that
Good.
I believe today was my last deer hunt of the year.
Oh,
so
man.
that was sad, but had a good hunt, saw some deer. So
I was referring to the Packer game, and then
Yeah,
you
I
said
was-
it's your last
I was trying to
deer
move
season
past
hunt
this.
too.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
just trying to completely
Short
move on to a
memory.
different subject.
We really
That
wanted
was-
to party on the pod tonight with the Packers win, but
I had my cheesehead ready.
no,
Did you?
dude,
Yeah.
they really messed it up for us.
Yeah, they really did.
They really did.
That's very selfish.
Appreciate you coming back, man. It's good to have you back. We've got you back.
Absolutely.
I know we could talk more about deer hunting, but we want to talk about predator hunting tonight. And I know you've been sending Johnny and I over our chats and stuff, some coyotes that you shot. And am I right? Was the one you sent us a picture of a 44-pound coyote?
Yes.
40. Oh my goodness.
It ended
So
up
can
weighing
you just
44
start off-
pounds.
Please tell us the story of that one. And then we'd love to ask you some questions about predator hunting.
Sure. Well, that one, I actually went out the other night with a couple of buddies of mine, and I was just calling for them. So I wasn't even the one that shot it. But I went out, took my call, calling for them, some of their properties that have never been called before. And boy, you could tell. It was a awesome night. We ended up calling in. Originally, I thought it was 12, but it was 13 coyotes total. And
Dang.
on that one in particular, played a rabbit in distress, and it was about not even 2 minutes into the stand, and three coyotes came running over the hill, and that's the only one we came out of there with. But my goodness, that was a big dog. I have not seen one that big quite yet, and I just for Christmas I got some gift cards from Cabela's, and so I used that gift card to buy a scale so I could start weighing them, because I kind of want to start keeping a log of male 44 pounds, and just kind of have an idea throughout the years like what sizes I'm looking at. But yeah, that was we got up to that one. I was like, my goodness. But yeah, it was actually a buddy of mine, Daniel, that shot that one.
Dang.
Awesome.
Dang, dude. How long have you been hunting predators?
So been hunting them for a very long time, successfully hunting them for about 3 years.
Okay.
So I got my start. My dad had a little Fox Pro call, and we would go call, and we did shoot some like in the daylight, but we always wanted to do the night hunting. So we started with having our lights on attached to our scopes to where we had green lights. So you kind of look through and it looks like you're looking at like night vision. We probably did that for 5-6 years leading up to when we got into thermals, but we called in a few coyotes, but we were always so nervous because you want to make sure you know what you're shooting at. And so by the time we knew for sure it was a coyote, it was gone. So we had successfully only ever killed one with lights until we got into thermal hunting.
That's funny that you say that you wanted to make sure. This is a true story. I have 50 acres. 13 of it is field, and it joins up to like another 40. I went out early one morning, and I'm calling. I've got a rabbit in distress calling. It's a mouth call, It's not an electronic call. And I'm calling, and I've called coyotes out before, but I'm calling, and I'm sitting in a duck blind because I have a pond, and I have a big duck blind on it. And so I'm sitting in the duck blind, and I'm calling, and I'm scanning the field, and I turn. I'm like, oh, here comes one. And I turn, and out runs this golden doodle that was visiting. It was visiting my neighbor's house. It wasn't like their dog, but someone was at their house with this golden doodle, and they must have just let it out to use the bathroom or something. And here comes this golden doodle on a string across the field, and I'm like, oh my God, that could have been terrible.
Identify.
Yes.
Shoot.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I've been trying to draw a bobcat tag here in Illinois for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
This was the first year that I actually did. And like you guys know, I sent you the picture. I did end up shooting one. My dad also drew a bobcat tag. And we were hunting and playing that prey in distress. And I looked over and I told him like, cat. And so he was up and I was recording with my scope. And then I got back on my binocular and I could see the cat and I could see the trees in the background. And whenever I went to switch from scope to my binocular, I was like, those trees are really close and that cat did not look that big. And so then I looked again and I was like, that might be a house cat. And then it turned broad so you could see a big tail. I was like, yeah. So what I thought at first was a bobcat at 150 ended up being a house cat at 70. So it's always important to identify what you're shooting.
Very important. Good. Yes.
That's good. Well, so for people who maybe are just trying to understand the connection between predator hunting and deer hunting, I was reading some stuff that coyotes during the fawning stage can kill up to 20, sometimes 70% of the fawns in certain areas, depending on deer density and their population. Is that what's that like in your area? Do you have a beat on how many roughly they kill, or what is a part of that your motivation for predator hunting, coyotes in particular?
Yeah, for sure. Because number one, I'm a deer hunter and I want there to be more deer, more turkeys. As long as we want it to be a healthy population, but I don't have any firsthand knowledge of how many are actually being killed. I mean, we've seen them before where you can tell like a fawn and it was killed by a coyote, but pretty much what you said, up to 20. The last number I just saw a couple weeks ago, and it said during the denning season, a female coyote will kill, it's estimated, I heard 19 feet itself and its pups is the number that I had heard. So So that's a lot of deer that are missing, and how many of those are bucks?
Sure.
And, maybe one of those could have been the 200-incher that could walk 20 yards from you.
Right.
Yeah.
Dude.
And not just deer, too. It's turkeys as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally. Yeah. Those young poults, they're called, right? I probably don't stand a chance.
In the springtime, I keep a trail camera on this trail that comes out to my field. And it's crazy. The amount of, I'll see the turkeys will use that trail. The fawns and the does and the fawns will use that trail. It's like daily, there will also be a predator on that trail. Sometimes not too far behind time-wise, but I'm always blown away by that. And I guess I shouldn't be, but to have like actual evidence through a trail camera of like, oh, there goes a doe and a fawn. 20 minutes later, here comes a predator,
Yeah.
It's kind of wild.
Yeah, and I guess one of the examples I have is from the growing deer episode earlier this year. That fawn, the coyote that I shot, that coyote and another one were tailing that fawn. And I mean, because typically you see coyotes just kind of trotting through the woods, and this one, they were both sneaking through on the tail of that fawn. So, but yeah, it's definitely a problem.
Yeah. So I want to tackle this. Say you're coaching someone, you get in a conversation with someone, and they say, "Man, I really want to get into predator hunting because I understand. I start seeing them around. I see some of the same things you just mentioned about catching them on my trail cams a couple of minutes after my target buck comes through or deer come through." Take us through it, like almost the different levels. Like, so how would you recommend someone starts trying to call those coyotes off their property? Would you suggest you dive right into the thermals like you do, or how could someone start doing this? And then let's get into how you do it now.
Okay, yeah. First and foremost, if your goal is to get rid of predators, I would recommend, before going out and shooting, trapping. That would be an awesome way.
Yeah.
And I think it's been proven that trapping is going to get you more of those predators off your property than just hunting them. But for me, I don't have a lot of time to put forward on that. So every now and then I'll set up some traps on like a Friday and then check them Saturday morning. But for my instance, I don't have quite enough time with work and everything to be trapping. So I picked up predator hunting, and it's beneficial and a lot of fun. So obviously I'm using thermals, but if somebody's getting right into it, I mean, thermal hunting can be pretty expensive because, I mean, I've got the Burris scope, and Burris has, I think, about the best level of thermal for the price. A lot of those other ones you can spend $7,000, $8,000, up to $15,000, and like the Burris scope, it's $3,000. The one that I have, I've got the Burris V. But if you're just wanting to get started, I think you can take your 243, 6.5 Creedmoor, whatever gun you have that you want to shoot a coyote with, and just start going early mornings when the sun's coming up, or go at dusk whenever, a little bit before the end of shooting light. So I think that would be a good way to start before you decide to jump into the thermal hunting. But I will say, if you do get into the thermal hunting, it can be rather addictive. I didn't play a lot of video games growing up. My parents had me outdoors for the most part.
Good job, parents.
Yeah. Shout out Rick and Kelly. But it's pitch black, and you're watching a coyote come in through a thermal scope. It's just so cool to see. But
that's got to be exciting. So before you get to thermals, what sort of approach do you take in the morning and the evening? Do you take different approaches, or is it the same approach? And walk us through what you would do with either a mouth call or a electric call in each of those times.
Yeah. So for me, I have a mouth call, but the mouth call I have, and it's a rabbit distress call. But I've only ever used it once, and I really just keep that in my bag just in case my e-collar, the battery dies on it or something goes wrong there. That way I've got something to mess with. But I think for the most part, morning and afternoon strategies are going to be pretty similar. It's really, I think, only is going to be a little different if you decide to hunt midday. Morning and afternoon, the coyotes kind of have like their bubbles that there's like some coyotes will have big bubbles as far as like area that they're willing to cover, and certain times of the day they're going to have those small bubbles, which your small bubble is going to be middle of the day when they're bedded up for the day. It's their nighttime. So if you're wanting to hunt midday, then you're going to have to try to get in tight to those coyotes. So those thickets, they really like to be in those thick areas, creek bottoms that are real thick. But then as far as your morning and afternoon, you don't have to be as tight, but you still want to be somewhere that has some thick cover. And I'm a big fan of hunting like those transition areas where you'll have like some thick cover meet a field edge. And I typically like to set up that whenever those coyotes pop their heads out of the woods, you can get a shot at them. We shot a couple the other day that we called from like 600 yards away, but there seems like there's a lot of times that they'll get to the edge of the field and they'll poke their heads out, and then they'll just not be completely convinced that they want to come in, and then they just get hung up. And So then you're kind of just trying to figure out like what's going to trigger that coyote to come in, which, I mean, jumping a little ahead a little bit to call sequence, but if that happens, my favorite call to go to is to play pup in distress. And that's kind of my go-to to coyotes hung up. A lot of times that pup in distress will convince it to come the rest of the way.
Nice. Good. So you do want to try an evening hunt. You get the opportunity to use thermals. Is there a particular time you're going out that you're targeting? Or is it just kind of any time of the night or anytime you can stay awake?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a really good question. I'll have to get back to you next year. So I'm trying to figure that out right now. So just for the last 3 years, I've really been diving deep into coyote hunting and thermal hunting. So I'm by no means an expert, but I have learned a lot throughout those years, and we keep getting more successful year after year. But as far as the thermal hunting, so just this year, I started keeping a log of the times and the locations, because last year I felt like midnight started to really pick up. And I had a theory that it was kind of whenever the traffic started dying down, that's whenever the coyotes would start to run around more. But this year, our most successful stands have been our first couple, and we've been going like right after dark. So far this year, I haven't really seen much of a difference from time. So we've been a lot of times just going right whenever it gets dark, jump in the truck and head out to make a stand.
I have a question, because I've heard this too. How important, Cody, is wind direction with predator hunting?
Incredibly important.
And that's what I've heard, that it's like, like you said, they'll poke their head out maybe, but if they're downwind of you, which they're going to try to do, right? They're a predator.
Yep.
If they're downwind of you and they get a good, like a whiff, like they might poke their head out for a second. You might not even see them at all, but I've just heard it's incredibly important.
Yes. So that is one thing that I've been keeping track of. We've never had a coyote come in from downwind, and I've gone with some people who don't care about the wind direction, and we're hunting their properties, and they're like, no, this is where I want to hunt. So I'm just like, okay, we'll do it. Never once have I seen one come in from downwind, and it's amazing how often that you'll see them catch them trying to circle to get downwind of you. That's whenever stand selection becomes incredibly important as well. So whenever I'm trying to pick a spot to hunt, there's several different factors that go into it. The main ones being the wind, and then also moonlight. Because as far as light, there's times where there's no moon, no snow on the ground, and you can park the truck in the middle of the field and call and have a coyote come 100 yards from you and shoot it, and they have no idea that you're there. An example of that is just 2 weeks ago, my dad's Bobcat. We got out there and we parked in this field, and we are about 500 yards from the nearest timber. Like, we can see 360 degrees. And I started with a prey in distress, and it was about a minute in, and this cat comes out of the timber and just comes all the way to us. And I kid you not, we were just parked right in the middle, and we're standing right next to my dad's truck. And he shot the Bobcat and dropped it. And my call, I've got it set. It's a feature on it called Fox Bang. Whenever it senses a shot go off, it'll play another sound, whatever sound you have it set up to. And I had it set up to play a howl afterwards. And that's just in case, like, you call in a double, you shoot one, trying to get that next coyote to stop. And I'm still trying to play with what sound I think's best there. I've tried pup in distress, like a fight challenge howls and just regular howls. Anyway, those howls start firing off. And so my dad and I are high-fiving. We're like, sweet. We both tagged out on our Bobcats in like 2 weeks. And then I scanned with the thermal again, and there were 2 coyotes that just peeked the hill and looking. And I was just like, wow, this is insane, because we just shot the Bobcat. Well, they started to try to get downwind of us, so they were circling us. And so we ended up shooting at, I think they were 230. And unfortunately, we did the old 1, 2, 3. I took the one on the right, he had the left, and somehow we both missed that one. But then that howl takes off again. So then we were like, dang, that would have been awesome to have a Bobcat and 2 coyotes. And then I look over, and then here comes another coyote. And this was one that, from a different direction. And he hung up, and he just came into those howls. So switched over to pup and distress, and he ended up coming into about 150, I think. And then we gave him the old 1, 2, 3 pop, and we were able to shoot him and get him down. But yes. So basically, the important things, when you do not want the wind to be blowing where you think the coyotes are going to be coming from,
right.
and you want to try to set up in a position where you know where the wind's going, and you know that if the coyotes try to get downwind of you, you'll be able to cut them off.
You have some shooting lanes.
Sure.
Yes.
Or
And
some
then
shooting opportunities. Yeah.
yes. And to go a little bit further on like the moonlight, for instance, like this weekend, we got snow on the ground here and a bright moon. You stick out. I don't care if you're wearing white, you need some light to show that color. So you basically just look like a black silhouette. So you got to have some cover standing by trees or a silo up against the barn or something. You got to have something to break up your outline, because coyotes see that movement really well whenever you're trying to move around.
So like a moon shadow, would that be a factor that you factor in? If the moon is shining from a particular direction, do you want back cover so you have a moon shadow if it's super bright?
Yes.
Or is that, okay.
Yep. So I'm always trying to get in the shadows.
Yeah.
For sure.
Kind of like turkey hunting, right? Where you want that shadow out in front. Yeah, you're hiding in it. And yeah, interesting.
Yep.
Cody Kraut, always trying to get in the shadows.
That's who I am.
Like, I know the moon is important, but I always, like, because my dad used to predator hunt a lot, and he would, he's got the old pictures of him. Granted, he would hunt during the daylight more often, but if he would always say, if there's snow on the ground and it's a big bright moon, he would go out with his 243, no light on the scope, no thermals, and he would be successful. But I guess I never got into it so much, and I don't know if he would have even known this, but I never would have thought at nighttime, like, make sure the moon is casting a shadow, whatever you're up against, to cover you. Because I'm like, it's nighttime,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought about that, but when you think about it, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got an app on my phone that just shows me that what the moon coverage is. So I kind of look at that. What's that?
What is the app?
I'll check there. Phases of the Moon.
Oh, that's an original name. Yeah,
pretty straightforward. And right now we've got ourselves a full moon.
There you go.
Full moon, snow on the ground. Seems like you should be hunting coyotes and not talking to us.
You can kind of go from, it'll change the date to let you know like how bright the moon's going to be throughout different times, and it'll tell you what day and everything like that.
So hold on. When you were doing that, you were not physically altering the phase of the moon? You were not doing?
Yeah, there's going to be a tsunami somewhere in the world because Cody Kraut was moving this.
About $1 every time I answer this question, but no, it was just the simulation of days to come.
Got it.
It's just a simulation.
Yeah, thank you.
Cody, let's talk about call sequence. Like, let us know what you've learned, maybe some mistakes you've made, and how you've honed in on what you like to do for call sequence.
Yeah, so I really like talking about this because this is one thing that I have been searching for, because whenever we got into it at the very beginning, we've got the lights on the scope. We were big on prey and distress, like what coyote's going to pass up a squealing rabbit. And that was kind of our go-to. And we played that same call just over and over and over and over and over. But the last 3-4 years that I've really started looking into it, getting into thermal hunting, I've done a lot of research into this, and I've been practicing going out and trying a bunch of different calls. And one thing that I've heard, and most of this is all things that I've heard from podcasts or read about, and then I just went and put it in practice, and then I like it. So I'm not going to be able to credit everybody for everything that I've learned, but just know it wasn't all me. I'm just taking what I've learned and putting it into practice and seeing what works for me. But one thing that I had learned was that coyotes basically have 4 triggers as to why they'll come to a call. And it's hunger, territorial, breeding purposes, or social, parental, which I guess is like breeding, but then territorial. And so you never know what exactly the coyote that is listening to your call, which one of those he's going to be interested in. And so I've kind of gone from just playing a rabbit for half hour and then getting out of there to trying to play sounds to trigger each of those for scenarios. So my favorite, so like the other night we went out and we ended up calling in 13, and I had gone through in my call beforehand and I just kind of went through and I was like, okay, what's going to hit as many of those triggers as possible? So what I did, I used the same call sequence the whole night. So I started out with a prey in distress, and I typically ran 2 different prey in distresses, and I ran them for about 3 minutes each. And then right after that, I went to some greeting whines, which is just a female. It kind of sounds like a whimpering. And from my research, it's a weird sound that's kind of like but basically that's a coyote telling another coyote to come here is what I've been learning. So from there,
So not a baboon. Not a baboon.
not a baboon, no.
Not a baboon.
Not called one in yet either.
Got it.
Okay, good. Good.
But anyway, then I'll go with play a lone howl, and then I'll give it just a little bit of time, and then I'll give it 30, 40 seconds, and then I'll play a pair howl, and then I'll give that 30, 40 seconds. And then this time of year, we're in that breeding season. Coyotes breeding season is basically from like January to about March 31st, which right now, January, we're kind of in that pre-rut phase. They're not actually breeding yet. Typically that's early mid-February is whenever that really starts. But this time of year, which is thermal hunting season for us, is typically in that breeding season. So I'm going to start going with the prey in distress, those howls, those whimpers, and then I'm going to start moving into some breeding sounds, and I'm going to start bumping up the aggression as I go along. So I kind of start with, there's a couple different calls I have that are 2 females that are in heat, and they'll kind of whimper and whine and chirp. And then I'll move up to where it's like 2 females that are starting to fight that are in heat. And then I'll just keep progressing to where eventually I've got it up to where there's a male and a female that are like a hooked pair that are just going at it. Like I've got some where the female isn't quite ready to be bred, but the male's ready to do the breeding. So that's really the sequence I like to do. And whenever I'm doing this, another thing that I've heard, which I think it holds a lot of weight for me. I heard there's a guy that has the rule of 3 minutes. And that's as long as he'll play a sound, because he's saying like, if a coyote's going to come to it, he should be there in about 3 minutes. And that kind of goes off of like, if you start a sound and a coyote hears it and he starts trotting at like 10 miles an hour, if he's a mile away, it's going to take him 6 minutes to get there. And so he just figures half mile, he should be there in 3 minutes. And I think that's very true, because like going back to whenever I played a rabbit for half hour at a time, if you call a coyote in a half hour playing the same exact sound, that coyote just happened to come into earshot while you were standing there. Because typically your call-ins are going to be within that 3 minutes. And so whenever I go into my rabbit, I'll play it. And then the only time I really pause my call is in between howls. And then other than that, I've got my caller calling the whole time. I'm throwing sound at them. And like I said, just upping that aggression, but I just constantly want them to be hearing it and then just find what ticks for them. And I heard some people say like, it's not realistic to just have that sound just blaring the whole time and just go from one thing to the other. But from what I'm learning this year, because last year I did things a little bit different. I had long pauses, which made my stands a little bit longer. But this year I've just been going sound for 3 minutes. They didn't like that. Play this one for 3 minutes. They didn't like that. Play this one for 3 minutes. Coyote, boom. And let's move on. So I'm trying to become a little bit more efficient. Not like we're in a bunch of tournaments and we are trying to win money on coyote hunting or anything, but I have fun doing it, and I'm just trying to be as efficient as possible so we can move on to the next spot and go find another.
That's
awesome,
really
dude.
interesting. That's like, I was wondering that, like, you know, do you play the certain sound and then you wait like 10, 15 minutes and play another one? But you're just saying you just have that thing constantly going.
Yeah, for the most part. In my opinion, and again, I'm not an expert and I could be totally wrong with this, I don't think that coyotes I don't think they can think as far as like a lot of people talk about, like, you want to build up to like, oh, this happened. Oh, now this is happening. Now this is happening. Like they're like building a story for the Coyotes. And I really think that it's just like whenever they hear something that is their trigger, then you got it. And I think that's been very beneficial to me. And like I said, I played that sound or that same exact sequence the whole time. And I called in the very first place we went, where we walk out and we have coyotes start firing off immediately. Like we're not even set up yet. And they're just over the hill. Like they have to be within 200 yards. I didn't call those coyotes in until about the 25-minute mark. And normally I'm gone by then. But I knew there were coyotes there. And so we just kept throwing sound at them. And then eventually we called in a quadruple. Wow. So that was wild. And they ended up coming into a, like the biggest brawl coyote fight that I have is what they ended up coming to. But throughout that night though, we called in several to prey in distress. They came into just solo vocals. They came into pup in distress, and then they came into coyote fights. So, that was all the same night. So it's not like, oh, this night they wanted prey. Oh, this night it was more of the vocals. It was same night, same exact sequence. Some of them would come right into the prey, some of them vocals. And that's also why I like to pause after the howls, because like the howls that I play, they're typically like 45 seconds long is how long they last. But it's not a continuous sound. So I'll play those and then I wait a little bit to give them time to come into them.
So you're basically just trying to figure out what's going to push their buttons that night.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's less of trying to tell a story, because they're not narrative creatures. You're basically trying to trigger their amygdala, whatever's going to piss them off or like get their brain fired up.
Yeah, trying to throw a very broad net. I just want to, like I said, they've got 4 reasons to come to the call, and I just want to try to hit all of those. And now I also believe there's some coyotes that you aren't going to be able to call. I think they're kind of like humans. Like some people are more aggressive, some are more timid. So I think there's some coyotes that you'll just never get to come to the call as well. But
and you just got to catch them chasing. You got to catch them chasing deer, and then you got to shoot.
There you
them.
go.
Yeah,
there you go. There you go.
Well, my brother 2 seasons ago, there's quite a few coyotes where we turkey hunt in Trumbull County, Wisconsin. And he just called one in with his turkey call. We knew one was in the area. And like you said at the first pod you were on, every hunt where a coyote comes along turns into a coyote hunt. Like that. So
exactly.
I have one more question, then I want to hear the Bobcat story. Johnny, if you got another one, you can jump into shots. So if someone's used to shooting at a range or at deer primarily with their rifle, what do they got to know? Or how do they, what might be something that they need to factor in differently when they're shooting at a coyote or predator?
Yeah, that's a really good question as well, because this is something I didn't know whenever I started, because, whenever you're deer hunting, I'm always thinking like hit them behind the shoulder, because I'm going for that like bottom third of the heart is where I'm aiming. But coyotes, the anatomy on the coyotes is actually up quite a bit further. So if you want to hit the lungs or the heart, you have to be hitting them in the shoulder if they're broadside. And if the coyote is broadside, their kill zone, as far as like lungs, heart, is about an 8-inch diameter circle. So it's really not that big. So the ideal shot on a coyote is going to be perfectly broadside, just center of the shoulder. If you have one facing you, the kill zone gets quite a bit smaller. I think they say it's about a 5-inch diameter circle. And then you just want to be dead center of the chest. And that can be a tough shot, because if you're off just a little bit, you're going to wound that coyote, and he may die. But coyotes, whenever they're wounded, they are going to run and they are not going to stop. They get after it. But if you do have a coyote broadside and you hit them behind the shoulder, that's whenever you're going to start seeing those spinners that they call them, where they just start spinning around in circles, kind of biting at it, in which they'll die. But the perfect shot is going to be broadside, and you want to hit them in that shoulder.
Got it. That's good to know. And what recommendations, like, do you whistle to stop them, or do you just let it fly on the trot? What are you doing?
So there's a few different things. So if they're coming into the call, a lot of times if you just pause the call, that'll get them to stop. Which is also, if you're out hunting it's really good to get familiar with your call to where you can kind of operate it without looking at it. You definitely want to know where that mute button is. So that can be a really good way to stop them. Other than that, I'll do my version of a howl, which isn't very good whenever it's in like crunch time, but it's enough that it'll get them to stop. So I'll just kind of give them a little like, or just bark at them or do something like that to get them to stop. Or I've got a couple of presets on my call that if you just switch the sound real quick, they'll at least be like, wait, what's going on here? And
Yeah.
then you
Startle them a little bit. Got it.
Yeah. So from the conversation so far, and maybe you mentioned it, but what is the brand of call that you use? Your electronic call, what is it?
I've got a Fox Pro. I've got the X24 Fox Pro.
Okay.
And I don't know how big of a difference it makes, but I just upgraded that call last year. And as soon as we got that call, we started calling in more coyotes. Because we had a Fox Pro, some of the same exact calls, which they said like the audio on the X24 was a lot better than the older version I had, but I don't know what it was about it. But yeah, it really started bringing them in quite a bit more. So, but yeah, so basically my gear, I got that X24 from Fox Pro, and then my rifle behind me here.
Talk about that.
Yeah, that's I just got it this year. Love this gun. It shoots so well. But it's a Winchester Renegade. It's a XPR. And I've got it action in a 243. It's a bolt action. And then my scope, obviously, it's the Burris. But then I'm shooting the Varmint X bullets from Winchester, and
Nice.
those things are deadly. They knock them down. They've got the bigger polymer tips. And whenever it hits the coyotes, just the fragmentation just immediately takes off, and you don't really get an exit hole out of them.
Yeah.
It's taking that bullet and it's just tearing up its insides, and it's just wasting all of its energy on that. So those things have been very lead.
Yeah.
What kind of tripod are you running? That seems to be really important.
Yeah. So I've got a Fat Boy tripod, and then I've got the Levitate head, the ball head, which it's not actually ball head. It's like a ball basically. But yeah, that's something if you do get if you get a tripod, you want to get comfortable with it before you go out and start trying to shoot coyotes with it.
Any other pieces of gear that are kind of like essential to coyote hunting if you want to set yourself up for the season?
My mindset, I'm thermal hunting. That's pretty much what I now. So another thing I would recommend, which again, it's not for everyone and it's not necessary, but I also have a monocular. This is the Burris BTH 50, but like we were talking about, coyotes can see movement extremely well. And so if you're out hunting at night, moon's up, and all you have is your gun, which is completely fine. You can absolutely kill them like that. But you're going to be in your gun on your tripod swinging around, and that's just a lot of movement. So that compared to just being able to hold this up and just rotate around, I would, if you can afford it, I would recommend getting a monocular as well.
That's great.
And if you want, if you're going to drag the coyotes out, take a rope or something to drag them out, because coyote legs stink. So let's keep that off your gloves.
Stink super bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how bad those things smell.
I was thinking before we get the Bobcat story, because I feel like that's the culmination, because we know how proud you were of the Bobcat and how you were waiting to get that tag. But a couple of things that you talked about, I've never really, really dedicated time to predator hunting. I've shot a handful of coyotes, and they've all been while I've been deer hunting, right? Like you see one while you're deer hunting, so you shoot it. I did take someone out on my property, and I had the rabbit distress call. And I just remember from a couple times with my dad when I was younger, I kind of remember how he would blow on it. And so I tried to mimic those noises. Like you talked about, 3 minutes. I kid you not, the one time we must have got right in the bubble, because I started hammering on this thing, and I must have only been on it for like 20 seconds, and out pops this beautiful coyote. And the person I was with, and I'm not going to throw them under the bus, they missed. But anyway, it was like instant. Like if you, like you're talking about, if you trigger what they want to hear, how quickly they are just, boom, I'm out here and I'm trying to figure out what it is. Second thing, again, I have a field, and sometimes I'll see them early in the morning out in the field. And so if they're within range, I shoot them. And one of them came was walking across my backfield, nose to the ground. I don't know if he was mousing or what he was doing out in the field, but it was before the hay was cut. Or no, actually, it was shortly after the hay was cut. So I think he was just out there looking for food, like mice or something that the combine hit. But he popped into the wood line, and when he popped in, I ran out on my deck and I had my 243, and I just mouth call.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever you do, you just make that noise. And that thing came out instantly and put it right on him and killed him. But just the whole point being, if they're there and you make the right noise, it's going to happen like fast. Fast. And I just think it's cool, you know?
Yeah. I tried to give it the old kiss or squeak yesterday. I had a coyote snuck by me at 20 yards and I didn't see it until it was too late and then I couldn't move. But yeah, I tried to squeal it back in, but it wasn't having any of it. But I did think of one other thing that's not really physical that I think is essential, but is incredibly important, which I learned the other night. And that is, if you're hunting with someone, communication. That is very important. So a couple of things. So my dad and I are typically, it's him and I whenever we go together, and we've missed some opportunities because poor lack of communication. So we kind of have a system in place that's worked really well for us. And basically that is, whenever we stick the call out, that call is at 12 o'clock. And so if we have a coyote come from straight right, we'll say coyote 3 o'clock. And so that way we're just on the same page.
Sure.
And then we're constantly talking to each other, like whispering, because typically they're far enough away and we're right there together that we can at least communicate a little bit there. And whenever we're ready to shoot, I'll ask him, I'll say, "You ready?" And he'll say, "Yep." And then what we do is we do what I call the 3, 2, 1 boom. And I'll just say 3, 2, 1, and then we shoot.
So in cadence.
Yes. And so typically, we're sending 2 bullets at that coyote. And like the other night, whenever I took my buddies out, or I went and called for my buddies, Daniel and Wiley, there were a few missed opportunities just because like I hadn't gone over like what I like to do. And so there's a few times where the coyote was there and then it would run off. And then I'd be like, what are we doing here? And they'd be like, he's like, "I was on him. I didn't know if he was on him." And they were like, "I didn't know if you were on him." So we started to get better later in the night though, with the communication and locating coyotes and all that. But yes, communication is very important, especially if it's dark. Yeah. Another quick story. We were in the middle of the field. We had like 200 yards from timber on our left, timber on our right. I played Prey in Distress, and on my monocular, it was 12 seconds whenever I saw the coyote, but it was 9 seconds in, and my dad says, "Coyote," right in front of the call. And I mean, it had come into like, I think it was like 50 yards, and I don't know how it covered that much ground, but I got out of my monocular and then started to get in my scope, and then my dad starts barking at it, trying to get it to stop. So I'm thinking it's running away. And so I actually have a camera that I'm recording in IR, and my dad's pointing his gun this way, and I'm sitting here like this, scanning over here, trying to find the coyote. So he ended up getting that one by himself, but he made it to the truck. Nice. So that's the important thing.
He's like,
that is
I got
the
this
important thing. Again, one more thing before the Bobcat. I'm so sorry, JD and Cody. This is
we're just building suspense. It's amazing. I love it.
I want to tell you the most wholesome coyote experience of all time, in my opinion. I had both boys with me, and at this point, they were like 5 and 3 or 4 and 2. They were young. We were in the duck blind, actually duck hunting. It was an evening sit for ducks, but you could see the back of the field, and a coyote popped out, and they're like, I mean, I had a shotgun. I wasn't going to be able to shoot it, unless it came and swam across the pond to us. But we're watching
unless it was in the deeks.
Yeah,
it was in the decoys.
Exactly. Yeah. We're watching it, and the boys are just fascinated. And then Wesley, who at the point, again, he was either 2 or 3, he whispers in my ear, and he goes, "Dad, does a coyote have a butt?" I just burst out laughing. I was like, "Yes, it does." Yes.
Oh, that's funny.
That was the best question, just out of the blue. Like, "Dad, does a coyote have a butt?"
That is fantastic.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does.
Anyway,
that's
give
good.
us the Bobcat.
I'm so sorry, but can I add one more thing before that I just thought of? Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm thinking
but
about
there's
a lot
more.
of different things that I've learned. There's
Yeah.
so much I could go on, but another
Yeah, man.
thing that I would recommend, like if you are calling to coyotes, if you can hear coyotes, sometimes all you got to do is match what they're doing on your call. So last year we went out, we were in this bottom field next to a creek, and then off to our left, there's a big hillside there. And we get out there, and I kind of already had it in my mind. Like I play this, then I go to this, then I go to this, trying to hit those triggers. Well, we get out there, and up on the hillside, I can hear coyotes like fighting, and it's like growls, whines, whimpers. And I've never heard this before. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Then I was like, wait a minute, I've got a call that sounds just like this. It's a call on my Fox Pro called Humpty Bumpty. And I turned on Humpty Bumpty, and you could hear those coyotes come crashing off the hillside. And they came out, and I was with a couple of my buddies, Brock and Eric, and we ended up shooting both those coyotes. But that was just a really cool situation where I heard a sound, and I was like, I've got that on my call, played it, and then they came crashing in. So
You were
and
like,
then
by
I had
golly,
them-
that's Humpty Bumpty.
yeah, the
Good
lucky
old Humpty
charm.
Bumpty.
And then
Got
I've
that
had like played like howls, and then there'll be coyotes like start doing like a challenge, howl barks back, and then play that, and then they'll pop up. So sometimes you just kind of call an audible and kind of read the room, and whatever the coyotes are giving you, give it to them back. So
good
I'm
stuff.
done.
No, you're not.
No,
You
you're
got the
not, man.
Bobcat story.
No, you're not. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was going to say, we're going to have you back for more after Johnny and I kill a bunch of coyotes. And we are going to come back to the Jedi Master and say, we're ready for our Jedi trials.
Heck, I say you come too. I'm not going to say Jedi Master, but I say you come on down, and then we'll go
Let's do
shoot
it.
some here in Illinois. But
That would
Let's
be
do
really
it.
fun. I'd love to.
so the Bobcat.
Yep.
This year, so last year, late, I started calling in a lot more coyotes to coyote vocals and coyote sounds, which coyote sounds, I mean like the breeding fights and pup in distress, and then vocals is more like howls and stuff. But I was calling in a lot more to those vocals and then the coyote sounds. But then this year, for a little while, I was thinking like, I'll just not play as much prey in distress. But then we drew those Bobcat tags. So I was going to start every stand with the prey in distress. Well, first stand we go to this year, we start off, and it's a Fox Pro sound, I believe. Yeah, that's called Mrs. McCotton. That's my absolute favorite rabbit sound. I just like the variations in it and how it kind of switches up the sound. But first place we go, we ended up having two coyotes come out. One circled and got downwind of us and took off, and I didn't think he could go there, but he was right next to our truck. And then we ended up shooting the next one. And then our second stand of the year, went and played that Mrs. McCottontail. And it was in like not even a minute, and looked over. And then here comes this Bobcat. And my dad and I, we both had tags. And so we decided like, we'll just take turns like shooting. So we'll just decide who's going to shoot it. And it was on my side. So I ended up taking the shot. And it ended up being a pretty big cat too. So
Looked like a big cat.
So I was really happy because I'm going to get it full body mount on it, and I'm going to put it in my office at work. So I was really happy that it was a big one and it was pretty. So it ended up weighing 28.6 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big
Although
cat.
whenever I weighed it, I did have it in a 55-gallon trash bags. However much a 55-gallon hefty trash bag is, you have to take that off of the 28.6. We'll call it 28.4.
There we go.
Yeah. So yeah, there wasn't much to it, but it was a cool experience and a really pretty cat. So I was very happy.
Awesome.
Congrats, dude.
Thank you.
Congrats. That's awesome. This has been awesome, man. Thank you. I've learned a ton. I didn't know much about coyote hunting and predator hunting, and I feel like I learned a ton just in the time we had. So thank you. And I'm sure we'll have you back. We'll
That'd
chat
be
more.
awesome.
So
Let's do it.
you are the record-breaking number of guests on the Huntxp
At popular
podcast.
demand.
So
Two-timer.
yes,
Two-timers club.
two-timer.
All right.
Solo two-timers club for Cody. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Cody.
Gun Daddy. I mean, Gunny Dan. I mean,
Gun daddy.
Gunny Dan dude.
Daddy
Gun
gun.
dude.
Daddy gun. Daddy gun time. Pew, pew,
Daddy
pew.
gun time.
Pew, pew, pew.
Shout out to you, dude.
Shout out to you, Gunny Dan.
Hey there, thanks for watching this video. I'm JD, founder and crew member of the Huntxp team. We're so grateful that you took time to watch this video, and hopefully it's helping you level up your hunting game. That's what we and our community is all about, and we want to invite you into this growing community of hunters that's all about leveling up each other's hunting game. So the first thing you can do is like and subscribe, but even more than that, we got some fun things going on over at our website, huntxp.com. We'd love for you to join our community there and stay connected with what we're doing, what we're working on, and we'd love to hear about what you're after. So thank you for watching this video. We'll see you next time.